So we are discussing about the nature and culture relationship, and I was talking yesterday that how the ecology, the environment, the nature is having the relation with the culture, and how culture plays a predominant role in shaping the nature, and at the same time the nature also plays a predominant role in shaping the culture. And in that sense, I was telling about the moment the geographical region changed, and because if you see, the suppose take the example of the country like India, where we have a coastal region, we have the region which are highly drought, and we have a region which is mostly the snow covered, and like Himalayan and region and all, and we have the central India, which is mostly the hilly region and drought prone regions. So if you look into this different geographical region of our country and see their culture, you can better understand that how the culture of a region is to be changed based on the changing of the environment. So we'll discuss about some of the theoretical issues pertaining to that. Then we'll debate over this. See, uh, if you look into this kind of try to understand the relationship between the culture and specifically in the environment, and you'll find that there is a theory called environmental determinism. And here there is a kind of perception that the environment determines the pattern of human culture, because the theory that is environmental determinism, it always claims that the environment plays a predominant role in shaping the culture of the human society. And what exactly they claim? That they claim that the environment determines the pattern of human behavior, human culture, human social development. Means what they're telling, any kind of process of social development, any kind of the human attitude, human approach, human behavior, human culture is being decided by the local environment. The theory of determinism that they argue. The German scholar Friedrich Retzel, he was also having arguing in favor of that. He was telling that the natural setting always influence the human life, and uh, he was telling that the habitat of the people cannot be neglected in assessing those influence that play in formation and functioning of the culture. See, I don't know whether you are aware or not. Mostly, you see, if you look at the various regions, you go to even, you can better understand if you go to any kind of tribal society, you will see that their habitat style, their housing pattern and all, their habitat styles and all, you'll see that all these things are decided by their culture. It is not that they construct the house on their own kind of wish. Rather, the entire this architecture they use for constructing in a house is completely based on their culture. Suppose you see, uh, even if you look at this in India, mostly the people believe in the Vastu Shastra and all. And you see, the Vastu Shastra is not an universal kind of Vastu Shastra is there throughout the country. Rather, the Vastu philosophy is to vary from region to region. And mostly you'll see that uh, you because if you go to the southern India, you'll see that I may be wrong. I'm exactly forgotten about that. See, suppose if you see in northern India, the people usually, if the house faces to the west, house faces to the north, they never lie, because generally the house faces towards the west and north usually go in a low price, and people when they book the houses usually they prefer to book the apartment, book the houses, which is mostly the east facing and also the southern facing. But at the same time, if you go to the southern India, mostly they never like the south facing houses usually, and specifically in their Vastu culture also, they usually advise for the newly married peoples, they always advise don't rent in house which is the south facing. Mostly that is the cultural constant. And see what I'm telling, once the region varies, the philosophy of their habitat culture also varies. So that's why the what the French the German scholar that Friedrich Ratzel was telling, that is absolutely true, that means we have to build off a kind of things which will have a kind of both positive impact in our society. And Friedrich Ratzel, what he was telling, that the we should not ignore the impact of culture and habitat, and the impact of culture on our the means the on environment. And at the same time, he was telling that the environment has used to play a predominant role in deciding the habitat culture of a community or the society. So that's why we should be very much uh, uh, aware about that rules. And that's why the environmental determinism theorists, they always claim that the environment determines the culture of a society or the community, and they claim that it is the universal throughout the globes, that the culture is being shaped by the local environment. So then another theorist group, that is called environmental possibilism, and they have a different opinion, that is called environmental possibilism, or some people claim it is an environmental particularism. So what exactly, specifically the French Booz, in his book, The Mind of Primitive Man in 1911, The Mind of Primitive Man, the French was noting out on this, the theory of environmental possibilism or environmental particularism. And he was mostly telling that, uh, he was telling that it is not that the culture is being created throughout the globe everywhere. Rather, he was telling that the environment furnishes the materials out of which the people shaped and developed the artifacts of a daily life. But he was telling that historically, if you look into the one culture, the environment of a particular regions, it created, it influenced the culture of a particular regions. Here telling the environment of a particular region. Are you getting my point? What I'm telling? The Franz Boas was telling that the environment of a particular region shaped the and developed the artifacts of daily life, the cultural aspect of the peoples living in a particular regions, and slowly those slowly what happened? Slowly those things got transformed from one area to the other area. So that's why he was telling that he was telling that the culture is being created in a particular the environment of a particular area uh, influence the formation of a culture in a particular in that area, and slowly the culture of that area is migrated to other area in the process of diffusion. So that's what they're telling that it is not that the culture is being created in a different space in a different time very frequently, rather the environment of a particular area influence the formation of a culture in a particular area, and from that particular area, slowly the with the process of diffusionism, the culture got spread over to other regions. So means they are telling that primarily the culture is being created in a particular area with the influence of the environment, and from there it got expanded uh, to the different region. And if you say that, what exactly some of the scholar also claimed that, they claimed that when a human being was mostly residing in the forest, and when in course of time their requirement got changed, so slowly the human being what they did, slowly the human being changed its material culture to cope with the changing environment. I have told you earlier also that when human being was staying in the forest and the requirement was quite less, while mostly they were hunting and gatherer, and they were not having that much science and technology in their hands for extraction of the resources from the either extracting the resources from the forest or hunting the animals or extracting the soil for more and more production. During the time, the human being was using the very low level simple technology. We used to tell the simple technology they were using. And if you look into this, if you go to the museum, one museum, and you will find that the evolution of human society, or if you look into the evolution of human material culture in a particular region, there will find that if the shape of all this instrument, you will see how with the passage of time this instrument got changed in course of time, and they used it uh, with the passage of time, because you see when they for the hunting the animals was plentifully available in the forest, they were using very simple technology. But when the population got increased and the pressure on resource got increased, then they adopted another they slowly used change the shape of the stones while throwing it to the different animals for killing those animals for hunting purpose. Then slowly when the iron comes, they use the different kind of dimension of this irons for the killing the animals. And then slowly when they get into the hunt, into the agriculture, how from stone age to they entered into the iron age, all these things, you know that how the human civilization process got changed, and all these things are being determined by the environment. So this environment, so what exactly Franz Boas was claiming, that that is called historical particularism or environmental possibilism. Means the culture is being influenced by the environment in a particular region and then got spread over to other regions. So then there are different kind of peoples have debated on the relationship between the nature and culture. Mostly the anthropologists mostly get into this, and they, because when we tell about the culture specifically in the domain, the anthropologists mostly focus on the culture of human beings. They put much interest in that. They theorize the relationship between the nature and culture. uh, so what they're exactly telling, they're telling it is highly essential to look into the nature and culture relationship. The relationship between the nature and culture has been a common and contested theme in the discipline. So it is highly needed to construct that what exactly the relationship is being developed. So if you look into the Susan Otner, one actually one social scientist, he was telling uh, there is a tension is always continuing between the human universe on the one hand and the cultural particulars on the other hand. They are telling, Susan Otner was telling that in 1972 he was telling that a tension is always continuing between the human universal in one hand and the cultural particulars of a particular community on the other hand. Firstly, means the human universe used to determine the culture of a country, the culture of that particular region. If you look at this kind of the basic differences between the nature and culture, the anthropologists like Claude Lévi-Strauss, He was the first person who was developing also a kind of giving a very good narration about the difference between the nature and culture, then similarity between the nature and culture, and the relationship between nature and culture. He was telling that before going to get into the to understand how nature and culture are linked to each other, it is highly essential to know that what kind of differences is being existed between this nature and culture. He was telling that on the one plane of nature, uh, he was telling that lots of diversified species are living. And the other one is cultural plane. He was telling there is a kind of natural plane, means that is called, he was telling that there is a plane of nature where the different diversified species survive, and there is a cultural plane, means there are two planes, he was telling. One is plane of nature, another is cultural plane or plane of culture. So he was telling that in the plane of nature, uh, the diversified species are living, not only the human beings, there are lots of diversified species are living in the plane of nature. While in the plane of culture or the cultural plane, you'll find that diversified functions are there. He was telling the culture is a functional aspect. So means when I'm telling the culture, you are telling it is a functional aspect because somebody's behavior, somebody's belief system, somebody's custom, somebody's tradition, all these things are a functional aspect. So here telling the symmetry postulated between the nature and culture involve the assimilation of natural species on the cultural plane. You are telling what exactly you are telling. If you look into this kind of try to understand the similarity between the or the relationship between the nature and culture, he was telling that Levi-Strauss was telling this. He was telling the symmetry which is postulated between the nature and culture. It's nothing but a reflection of assimilation of natural species on the cultural plane. But what exactly he was telling? He was telling that if you want to explore the relationship between the nature and culture, you'll see that it will show you that how the species living in the nature are showing the cultural activities, having the cultural behavior, having uh, reflecting the kind of the cultural attitudes, means their attitude, beliefs, customs. So that means what you are telling. You are telling there is an assimilation between the natural spaces and cultural plane. Means there is a kind of assimilation is being held between the natural spaces and how they are behaving, how they are acting, all in the cultural plane. So who is the natural species? That also have to understand, because we are not understanding what exactly the natural species he means here. It seems that his writing coming in the savage of mind, that what exactly the Levi-Strauss. If you get a chance of reading this book, please read the savage mind. Is an excellent contribution by the Levi-Strauss. He reflected so many things in this issue. Even for literature people also, this is exactly very good also for the literature people. For any discipline from humanities and social science, this book is very good, The Savage Mind. It reflects that he was telling that in 60s and 70s he wrote, very recently he died, just I think 2 years back I think he died. Uh, so he was giving a kind of cultural debate and all. Uh, he was telling here, uh, he was while postulating the relationship and while he was debating on the natural species, he was giving an example of man and woman. He was telling woman could be symbolized as a nature and man as a culture. Very interesting things he was telling that in his debate over the nature culture relationship. He was telling the nature culture relationship is just like a relationship between a woman and man, and he was telling woman is considered as a nature and man as a culture. Describing woman as a biological individual was not enough for Levi-Strauss. Levi-Strauss was telling woman should not be only considered as a biological individual. Getting my point? Because whenever we are telling the species, whenever we tell man or woman, he was telling from the angle of woman, he was telling that woman's, because while linking to the nature and culture, he was telling nature is, he was telling that woman is a representation of nature and man as a representation of culture. So you're telling that women should not be looked simply as a biological individual. He was telling that woman is a natural product, naturally procreated by other biological individuals. He was telling that woman is a natural product which is naturally procreated by other biological individuals. He was telling that women should not be only considered as a biological individual, though it is being created by other biological individuals, but it is naturally procreated. So continuing his comparison, as women to objects, Levi-Strauss differentiated them from goods and services. He was telling that woman is not simply as a goods and services like other object. He was telling that woman is not a manufactured objects. Uh, he was telling that woman is, one second. Sir, no, sir. Sir, ମୁଁ ଟିକେ ନା ସାର୍ ପ୍ରୋଗ୍ରାମ ପୁରା କ୍ୟାନସଲ ମୁଁ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଡିଟେଲ୍ସ କହିବି କ'ଣ ହେଇଛି ମୁଁ ଗୋଟେ କ୍ଲାସରେ ଅଛି ସାର୍ କ୍ଲାସ ସରିଗଲେ ମୁଁ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ କଲ୍ ବ୍ୟାକ୍ କରୁଛି ହେଲା ହଁ ସାର୍ so he was telling that women should not be considered as an object because generally in most of the writing the people have identified women as an object and all. So he was telling that woman is not a goods, woman is not a services which is not being manufactured objects. That is, woman is a socially products and culturally manufactured by the technical agents. You are telling that woman is being worshipped by the nature. Woman is being worshipped in our society. So you are telling woman is a social product. It is not a kind of goods and services which is manufactured objects. It is not by manufactured by a certain means of technology, by a machine and all. It is a social byproduct. It is which is culturally manufactured by technical agents. Seriously, the woman is a social product which is culturally manufactured. So it means here the main intention is telling that somebody is man, somebody is woman and all, which is very culturally described. The principal differences which he concludes is that from this culture and nature taking men and women into account, he was telling the culture's dominance over nature when he states that nature considers women as a homogeneous, but culture asserts them all to be subject to the same type of belief and practices, since in the eyes of culture they have the common feature that man has the power to control and increase them. See what I was telling here, he was telling that in the society we have created such a kind of system culturally that woman is a homogeneous unit, but and culturally what they tell there, they tell that mostly women, all means he was telling that in the almost all the society the man controls and the entire power throughout the globes and they dominate the universe. So he was telling that in her essay he was arguing in a different context. He was telling that is female to male as a nature is to culture. He was writing an essay. It was a very good essay he has written that is female to male as a nature is to culture. So Otner makes two clear arguments in this regard, the relationship between the nature and culture. He was telling, see the culture as an entity that has the ability to act upon and transform the nature. He was telling the culture is an entity that has the ability to act upon and transform the nature. So he was telling the culture can help in transforming the nature. Culture has the ability to change the nature. She equates the relationship between nature and culture to the universal devaluation of women. He was telling that the relationship between the nature and culture is more or less the relationship between the woman and men, and the universal devaluation means how the society has ignored the woman in most of the cases also. So like that the people have ignored the nature. Throughout her essay, Otner repeatedly professes bold universal in discussing the dichotomy which one might argue are generalizations, such as her statement that in every known culture, woman is considered some degree inferior to the man. So that's why he was telling that. We look at this relationship between nature and culture. The most of the time we have ignored the nature, and he was telling that most in almost all the society that woman is considered as a degree of inferior to the man in all these cases. Particularly. So, echoing the Levis-Strauss theory of structuralism, Otner believes that nature and culture are both categories of human thought, as there is no place out in the real world where one could find some actual boundary between the two states of realm of being. He was telling that, Otner was telling that. So, there is no such kind of real world differences you will find between the relations between the nature and culture, because both are interlinked, both are interrelated, because the culture also influences the nature and the nature also influences the culture. Because I'll give an example that if you look in this American society, mostly the American society is a beef-eater society, and you see when to get more and because the culture is befitting culture, and this giving an example that so in the initial phase they started because as a culture of eating beefs, they started cultivating more and more kind of animals, buffaloes, cows, bullocks, and all. And once they cultivated more and more this animals for eating purpose as a culture of eating, so the rise of this cattle population has increased the pressure on the local environment, for which the local environment got deteriorated, and the huge loss is being held to the local environment because of destruction and all these things, because of rise of this cattle population, which influence the nature. So for which the means the nature is being destroyed. So that means what exactly some people theorists claim that the how the culture also sometimes influence the nature and natural setting. He was telling that similarly, if you look into the another society where the peoples are not the who are completely the vegetarians, and they are not having such a culture of and eating beefs and all, they are more protective towards the nature. Their culture, they are culturally they are caring of the nature, because they mostly depends upon the nature for their survival. And uh, so means what they claim that the culture of eating beefs leads to the rise of cattle, and the increase of cattle population brings a pressure on the environment, for which the environment got deteriorated. So Otmar also focus on the universality of rituals as an assertion in all human culture of the specifically the human ability to act upon and regulate rather than passively move with and moved by the genesis of the natural existence. What exactly they are telling that? They're telling that we have to regulate the nature. We have to when we claim that we are controlling the nature and all, this is not really not wise. And what makes the culture distinct? He was telling that the we discussed about the nature and all. So now let us look into this how the culture has also impacted and all. So Levi-Strauss was defining that culture specifically as this process of transcendence by means of systems of thought and technology of the natural givens of existence. At some level, every culture incorporates this notion in one form and another. If one through the performance of rituals as an assertion of the human ability to manipulate those givens. So what I was telling that means we develop certain kind of technology, we develop certain kind of ideas, we develop certain kind of knowledge which is part of our culture, and we use those knowledge as a kind of in extracting the resources. Because if you look into this now, we want to extract the more and more resources from the earth. We want to extract to destroy the local environment. Means by using what? We are telling that we are using the science and technology. These are all knowledge. These are all culture, because the science and technology is part of our knowledge system. The ideas we are using today, they are part of our knowledge system, which is part of our culture. Because this cultural knowledge, this knowledge is means which is part of culture, is helping us in extracting and destroying the natural settings, natural environment. Means in the process of development, in the name of development, we are adopting the different cultural knowledge setups for which we are using against the nature and extracting the resources and destroying the natural settings. As a result, culture is not only clearly distinct from the nature in Ortnot's view, but this ability to transform nature actually makes it superior. So what is telling? He was telling that we are telling that sometimes the culture influences the nature in such a way that the culture plays a superior role than the nature. Because you see what exactly we are telling that. Suppose now if we accumulate more and more knowledge in the name of science and technology, and we try to destruct the environment, the nature and all, you are telling here the culture is claiming itself as in superiority than the environment. The culture dominance over the nature, according to Ortnot, because it is identified nearly everywhere with men who occupying the higher positions to perform the tasks and rituals to create a sustained culture. So he was telling that because they were comparing men and women. So in that sense, he was telling that women, the culture dominance over the nature, because it is identified nearly everywhere with men. Means I've already told you that how they have told the culture is identified with the men who occupying the higher position to perform the tasks and rituals to create and sustain the culture. You are telling the entire cultural context of a society is mostly dominated, because if you look at the entire globe, the man is always considered as a powerful through muscles. It is not that in India, throughout the globe, though sometimes we claim that an Indian society is having a hegemony of this gender difference and all. You see, throughout the globe, in most of the countries, the man is always considered as, because the superior and all. Because you see, the very interesting thing you will find, even if you see the example of agriculture, I always claim that, even I am developing a paper on that, that the rise of science and technology, how it is displacing the woman, because we are telling about the technology. The see, if you'll give a simple example of agriculture, if you look into the agriculture throughout the globe, it is the woman who has more contribution to the field of agriculture. But in the contemporary days, with the introduction of science and technology, with the introduction of new technology, with the mechanization of agriculture, the women are being displaced now, because women physically, women are less having advantage to run the machines. So, and most of the machines, science and technology and the new mechanism whichever we have developed in the form of new technology are not that much woman friendly. So for which the women are being displaced. So that's why they are claiming that the new cultural knowledge which we have developed, these are all having link with the men. The men mostly dominates this new technology, new cultural technological knowledge, that is a new culture. The universal devaluation of women could be explained by postulating that woman is seen as a closer to the nature than men. But you see, if you look into that, why they claimed woman as a nature, because you see, if you look at this relationship between man and nature and woman and nature, and when I'll teach you the ecofeminism, I'll tell you that woman is more close to the nature, because even if you look at this, who is considered the product of agriculture, the woman is considered the mother of agriculture. And you see, who is mostly dealing with all these things? See, every morning, who is bringing the fuel woods? Today we are using gas, that doesn't matter, but you go to a very remote rural area, you will see the women who work down for a long to bring the first the fuel from the forest. They used to go and bring the roots and fruits from the forest. They used to go to the source of drinking water to bring the water from the source. When there is a degradation of the resources, it is the women who are more victimized. I'll teach you when I'll teach you the ecofeminism, how the nature and the women relationship is being very clearly explained. See, that means the nature and women are very closely linked, and in all aspects, when there is a degradation to the nature, it is the woman who is mostly affected. So that's why the Levi-Strauss and Ortner have argued that there is a very close proximity between the culture and man, and there is a very close proximity between the nature and woman, for which they have claimed woman as a nature and man as a culture. And so very interestingly, they have examined women in nearly in a society, as Ortner said, that they generally viewed as more symbolic of nature than men. So they are telling symbolically the man is more closer to the culture and woman is more closer to the nature, for which they reflected nature and as a woman and culture as a man. Several reasons are given, such as woman's direct bodily involvement with the reproduction or with her assigned socialized role that leaves her within the confines of this subordinate domestic households. They are telling that woman is mostly confined to the domestic households because by naturally, by socially, by culturally, they are being mostly confined to the households. But see, all these writers are foreign writers, they're French writers and all, they're not Indian writers. And they are not writing the cases of India, they're writing the cases in the global context. So that's what I'm telling. Throughout the globe, the woman always is being subordinated. The woman is mostly confined to the domestic households activities. And if you look into this, the woman as a kind of having the reproductive capability is mostly linked to the nature, because the nature had the power to reproduce, which is also in the context of woman, not in the context of male or man. Otmore clarified that in reality, when examining a woman in a biological sense, she is not closer to the nature than man. So since both are mortal being with consciousness, but when examining the woman's less powerful, if even non-existence role in cultural ritual, as well as her focus on child rearing tasks, she appears that way. You are telling that like nature sustain kind of he was telling that like nature go for taking care of its entire entity and species, like that woman is more engaged in child rearing and taking care of the other family members, for which the woman is more closer to the nature. Women, according to Otner, are the primary agent of socialization for children, transferring them from a mere organism to a cultural human beings, teaching in manners and the proper way to behave in order to be a bona fide member of the culture. So what they are telling, Otner was also telling that the woman as a nature is how they're linking. They're telling woman is as a part of nature is trying to socialize the children. They're transforming the children as a mere organism to a cultural member of a society. He was telling the woman makes a children a bona fide member of a particular culture. So that's why the nature controls the culture. Nature having impact on culture, like that the woman also contributing the culture, making a children a bona fide member of a particular culture. On that function alone, Otmore said that women should be seen as a symbol of culture just as equally man. There are lots of arguments that are going on. They like how the things should be looked and how the things should be very continuously observed, and these are all a reflection of man, the relationship between the nature and culture, and which we discussed today about the theory of environmental determinism. Then we discussed about environmental possibilism. Then there is a concept of cultural core. People claim that the particular things is being created in a particular core area and it got transferred to other area. And like that, we also discussed about the men and women relationship in reflection with the nature and cultural relationship, taking Ortner and Levi-Strauss. Okay, any doubt over this? I'll send you all the readings and materials. They are very interesting. You all find out if you can find any soft copy, the Savage of Mind of Levi-Strauss, and read their books. Very interesting books. Lots of issues are being involved in there, and very interesting books.
Sir, which author? Sir, which author?
By Levi-Strauss, I'll send the details. Levi-Strauss, The Savage of Minds.
Okay, sir.
I'll also search whether soft copy is available or not, because generally very rare libraries are having the hard copy, and so but they're very old books, 1970s books. Around 50 years back, that book was being written. So then we'll discuss on the other issues in the next Thursday class.
Sir?
Huh?
Sir, who is the current assistant registrar for College Institute?